of meters thick. The oceans of the world contain about 3.5% salts, mostly sodium chloride. This may seem to be very little, yet a cubic kilometer of seawater holds nearly 27 million metric tons of salt. The Dead Sea Salt Sea in Palestine is about 9 times as salty. GE 14. 3. Salt was readily available to the Israelites. Evaporation of the Dead Sea waters furnished an ample supply, although of poor quality. There were salt-bearing hills near the southern end of the Dead Sea, not far from where Lot's wife became a pillar of salt. GE 19. 26. Zep 2. 9 supplies of salt in northern Palestine may have come, at least partly, from the Phoenicians, who, it is said, obtained it by evaporation from the Mediterranean. Notwithstanding such virtually inexhaustible supplies, salt has not always been readily available to man. Wars and revolutions have been fought for it. In ancient China, salt was second to gold in value. Wives and children have been sold into slavery just for common salt. Caesar's soldiers received money to buy salt, the sum being called a salarium, from which comes the English word salary. Compares 4. 14. The Bible takes note of salt as an essential part of man's diet, as a seasoning for food. Job 6. 6. Under the Mosaic law, anything offered on the altar to Jehovah had to be salted, not because of flavor, but doubtless because salt represented freedom from corruption or decay. Lot 2. 11, 13. Es 43. 24. Large quantities of salt evidently were stored on the temple grounds for this purpose. Ezra saw to it that plenty was on hand for the sacrifices. Es 6. 9. 7. 21, 22. It is reported that Antiochus 3c. 198 BCE gave 375 Medimni c. 20 kl. 562 bu of salt to the temple service. Certain healing, medicinal, and antiseptic values are attributed to salt. Newborn babies were sometimes rubbed with salt at birth. Es 16. For in limited quantities salt is beneficial on certain acid soils or when mixed with manure, but if allowed to accumulate in the soil, it kills vegetation and the land becomes barren and unfruitful, as was the case with the once fertile Euphrates Valley. A city condemned to total destruction was sometimes deliberately sown with salt, this act expressing the desire that the place be perpetually barren and sterile. De 29. 22, 23. JG 9. 45. Job 39. 5, 6. J 17. 6. Figurative use. Salt is often used in the Bible figuratively. Jesus told his disciples, "You are the salt of the earth, a preserving influence on others, preventing spiritual putrefaction and moral decay." The good news they carried would preserve life. However, he went on to say to them, "But if the salt loses its strength, how will its saltness be restored? It is no longer usable for anything but to be thrown outside to be trampled on by men." Mount 5. 13. Mr. 9. 50. Lu 14. 34, 35. One Bible commentator remarks on Matthew 5. 13. The salt used in this country United States is a chemical compound. Myriad of soda. And if the saltness were lost, or it were to lose its savor, there would be nothing remaining. It enters into the very nature of the substance. In Eastern countries, however, the salt used was impure, mingled with vegetable otextoi acute muritra longo. Salt c. 843. A life of sin, or who are responsible for so stumbling others. Mr. 9. 42-49. Using the term to convey a different sense, Jesus thereafter said, "Have salt in yourselves, and keep peace between one another." Mr. 9. 50. The Apostle Paul used it in a similar way, saying, "Let your utterance be always with graciousness, seasoned with salt, so as to know how you ought to give an answer to each one." Col 4. 6. One's conduct and speech should always be in good taste, considerate, wholesome, and tend toward preserving the lives of others. Salt, city of. A Judean city in the wilderness. Jos 15. 61, 62 it is identified with Kpukmer and Horvetkmer, about 20 kilometers 13 mi of Jerusalem, by the NW shore of the Dead Sea. Salt, Valley of. A valley where, on 2 occasions, the Israelites defeated the Edomites. 2 Sate. 13. 2 Chi 14. 7 Its precise location is uncertain, but scholars have generally recommended either of 2 locations, one near Beersheba and the other to the east of the Salt Sea. East from Beersheba in the Negev is a valley, the Arabic name of which Wadi al-Milh, means Valley of Salt. The location is one where Judeans from the En and Edomites coming from this might conceivably meet in combat. However, some scholars, preferring a location in Edom's territory, identified the scriptural Valley of Salt with the plain SSW of the Salt Sea. At present, the lowlandness of the Salt Sea is quite marshy and hardly a location that would be chosen for a battle. But, since the level of the Salt Sea has risen, the plain may have been more firm at the time the battles occurred, or the fighting could have begun in a portion of the valley where the ground was not marshy.